All right, guys, today we have a real special guest in the house. This man has been around for 3 decades now in the game. He's produced some of your favorite joints. You might know him by his name, but you definitely know his work. You know, I'm talking about the one and only Mighty Vic.
Yo, what's going on, Panda?
What's good with you, Vic?
What's good?
How you
What's
doing
good?
today, bro?
Everything is good, brother. Everything is good. And you?
Man, I'm so grateful to have you on the platform today. You know, with my interviews, I like to start at the beginning and do things in chronological order so we can give the people a better idea of, you know, where you came from, how you got to where you are today. So where were you born?
Manhattan, in New York City. Um, the hospital don't even exist no more. Polyclinic.
Wow.
So you can imagine.
So how long did you live in Manhattan for?
Not at almost the age of 9. We moved out to Queens. We moved out to East Elmhurst, Queens.
And did you grow up with any siblings at that time?
Yeah, I had two older sisters, 10 and 11 years older than me.
And so you're the
Yep.
youngest.
Yeah, the youngest. So, you know how that goes. And the only boy. So,
Right.
you become the king of the household.
So your house, right? Like, was it a very traditional household?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Traditional Puerto Rican. I mean, where I grew up was across the street from Lincoln Center, right? So that whole area they used to even before I was born, they called it what is it, Little San Juan, right? And those were the Amsterdam Avenue projects. And it was in the back of the Lincoln Center. I don't know if you've ever been. Um, in the backstage, the outside stage. So then, out, in back of the outside stage, you'd see the projects from there.
Wa- Wow. And were you
Yeah.
growing up with both your parents in the household?
Yes, both parents. Correct.
So what was
So,
it like for you as a child growing up in Manhattan and Queens?
well, I mean, I loved the city. I mean, when we were moving, I couldn't even imagine living anywhere else. Um, in growing up, I mean, they used to at that time they'd have events and things for the community. I mean, obviously it was a poorer community, right? So they had like things like West Side Story. I grew up watching West Side Story is one of my favorite um, movies of all time, right? I think it has one of the most incredible soundtracks. Um, so they uh, twice, I think twice in the summer for 3 nights, they would have West Side Story play free for the entire community. So everybody would go, I mean, and it was peaceful. There was no problems, packed to the rim where uh, you could not find a seat, a standing room, or you sit by the bushes, whatever it was. It was the entire project was there, 100% peaceful, and they'd have, I mean, it was quite the experience. Nothing that you're going to experience today at all.
What year are we talking about?
So we're going back, had to be at least 69.
Wow. So like you're
Yeah,
how old at this time?
I'm like 5 years old. I was born 64.
You're 5 years old at
Yep.
this time. Wow. Okay. And what are your parents doing for work at this time?
My dad drove, um, he used to do deliveries for the only film editing rental company in New York. So this is when they had tables for splicing film, right? So it was two brothers that owned the company. They had the only game in town. So he was well actually before that he worked for Cinefex, but they were doing the same thing. He was delivering films at the time, so he would deliver films to different movie studios.
So he's already somewhat in the entertainment business, right? And you're watching this growing up. Did that have an effect on you as far as like your aspirations?
Man, you know what? Maybe subconsciously. I don't. I don't know. Honestly, I mean, if I'm gonna count something, I would probably say more my sisters because they used to buy every 45 possible at the time, and I mean, I used to take them and put them on my on my tricycle on the handlebars. I used to fill them all out. Um, I remember riding around the house with my tricycle, filled with 45s on both sides of the handlebars. So, that was more of, where I found a love for music,
Hmm. And what was your mom
and for the
doing? Was she a
entertainment.
stay at home mom?
No, well, yeah, no, she used to clean offices. She used to do maintenance, at night, um, AT&T building. Well, it was the AT&T building at one time, um, over there by Bryant Park.
So from the way that you're describing it, it seems like you grew up in a really cultured household with
Yeah.
music
hmm
and
Yeah, no, yeah, it was yeah, music, it was Spanish cooking. I mean, my mother would cook before going to work because she was working at nights. So we would always have a meal. Uh, before my dad got home. So it was like this little space. My mom leave to work, and then my dad would be home maybe an hour or two after.
as far as like the household, right? Was like your parents just speaking Spanish to you or like were you
Yeah, yeah, that's all they spoke. I mean, even before my dad passed at 88. So even then his English wasn't. It wasn't. He had a heavy accent. He still had a heavy accent. So yeah, it was. I mean, at one point when I was younger, before going to school, Spanish was my first language.
so you're at that early age, right? Besides music, were you into sports or like were you really into school? How would you describe yourself as a child?
Well, I got into. Well, yeah. I mean, I used to love baseball, but it wasn't until we moved to Queens is when I started playing little league and got into sports, and that was more because of a next door neighbor that was that loved baseball. His family was a Dominican family that baseball was their thing. So, and because my dad used to get free tickets from from being in the industry, he'd get like these great box seats at Shea Stadium. So he used to always take me when we used to live in Manhattan, and then when we moved to Queens, I would be able to he just would give me tickets, and I'd take kids from the neighborhood. So I fell in love with baseball. Baseball was my number one thing.